Welcome to Extra Time with me, Gary James, and guests former Walsall and Wolves player Mel Eves and Walsall fanatic, music impresario and pop star spotter Steve Jenkins. Gentlemen, welcome to Extra Time. Thank you for coming on. No problem, and before we talk about Walsall and the road to Wembley, let's find a little bit about you guys, shall we? Let's have a chat. Now, you've been pals for a number of years, shall we say?
It has been a number of years.
When and where did you first meet?
Well, it was in Walsall's, before one of the Walsall games, because a very good mutual friend of ours is a Walsall legend.
Who's that?
Marshy.
Ah.
And he's I think has he got the record number of caps now? Chris Marsh, or has he? It's getting on for it anyway. It's about 500 games or something. But we met and obviously got on very well. Obviously, Steve used to come with another kind of guy that's probably slightly well known in the music industry. He's a Walsall fan, Pete Waterman. So Pete used to come as well and tell us about his trains.
Yeah, that was always
he was supposed to come today, but his train was cancelled.
Yeah, we had to hear it. You had to go through the rigmarole of telling us all about his trains before we got onto the proper stuff about the football. But no, it was great.
And that's when you first met?
Yeah, so we've watched a lot of games together and, looked at a lot of players and had plenty of conversations about football over the years. So
brilliant. Okay, well, Mel, obviously born in Darlaston.
Yeah, just down the road.
Yeah, and Wolverhampton Grammar School, so you're obviously a bit cleverer than most.
Well, I don't know how that happened, but I suppose...
Debatable, Mel.
Played for England schoolboys?
Yeah, well, as I say, when I was at the grammar school, and then I actually played for Wolves reserves and Wolves youth team. Yeah. In the FA Youth Cup. I know one of the games when I was still at the school, so I had to get permission from the headmaster. And remember, I think it was the third round of the FA Cup, and we played Tottenham, and Tottenham had got a fantastic team, and there was a certain Glenn Hoddle, and about 4 or 5 of the lads from the Tottenham team went on to play first team. Yeah. Great game. We lost 3-1, but it was a very close game. But I've still got the team sheet from there, and it was smashing to see all the players that went on from Tottenham to be first-team players at Spurs. Yeah.
And your debut against Ipswich for Wolves in the old First Division.
That's right.
Do you remember that? What was that like? And go back?
Yeah. Well, I played with an absolute legend at Wolves, John Richards. Yeah. And to play up front with John when I'd been grown up as a Wolves supporter, and to watch them for years from the North Bank at Wolves, and then to actually play alongside quite a few of the players that I'd watched for years, and especially to play up front with John was absolutely brilliant.
Who was the manager at that time?
Sammy Chung had just taken over from obviously somebody that'd done really well for Wolves, Bill McGarry. Yeah. And Sammy gave me my debut. Because I was a couple of years when I left the grammar school playing in the, fighting to obviously make my way and playing the reserves and then finally get a chance.
Yeah, and you played a summer sort of tour with England Bees, didn't you, with Bobby Robson as a gaffer?
Yeah, that was brilliant because at the end of the season, I think I was brought back into the side and we had 3 games. I got my got my first goal in league football at Chelsea, and we'd still got to avoid relegation that year from the old First Division, which for the younger guys listening is the Premiership now. Yeah. When I say First Division, don't think it's Div 3. And we drew 1-1, and I scored the equaliser in the last 10 minutes. So that was my first goal against Peter Bonetti, the cat.
Peter Bonetti.
Then the next game, we were on TV and I got the winner 10 minutes from time again. We beat Manchester United 2-1 on Match of the Day. Yeah. And then the third game, we beat Villa and I got the first one. We beat Villa 3-1 at Molineux. And that got me a call up into the England B team for the summer tour.
And of course you played, we're going to be talking Wembley in a few minutes about Walsall getting to Wembley, which is why I've managed to persuade you guys to come on. But you played at Wembley, haven't you? You played in the cup final, in the League Cup final where you beat Nottingham Forest?
Yeah, absolutely brilliant. I only made one appearance at Wembley as a player. I've been there quite a few times, obviously, to watch games, but to go there as a player and lift the trophy and beat who were a Nottingham Forest team managed by Brian Clough, who were the current European champions, and went on in about 2 months later to hold it again and win the European Cup for the second season on the trot. Was magnificent because they were going for 3 League Cup wins on the trot as well.
Yeah.
So we stopped them doing that, and it was a great effort. Andy Gray scored the goal. If people can remember it, it was the mix-up between Peter Shilton and Dave Needham from a big through ball from Peter Daniels, and Andy Gray got on it, and we won 1-0. But we thoroughly deserved it because we'd done the homework and we knew what we nullified their big threats, and it all worked out very well for us.
And you obviously played for spells at Sheffield United, at Gillingham, at Mansfield, and full landing at Walsall. Of course, did you ever see him play, Steve?
Well, I mean, I obviously saw him play on TV and all of that, but not actually for Walsall.
Well, you would. Well, the thing is that when I left Wolves, I ruptured my Achilles at Wolves.
Right.
I then went and got fit at Manchester City, to be honest. Played 3 reserve games for Man City, scored 3 goals, but I wasn't quite 100%. And then Sheffield United actually picked up the phone and said, "Come and sign for us." So I wasn't quite in the position, because I asked Man City, they said, "Well, we need to see a little bit more." But Sheffield United had offered me a contract, so I went and signed for Sheffield United with Ian Porterfield, who scored that famous goal against Leeds in the 1973 FA Cup final for Sunderland. And I had a smashing 18 months, couple of years at Sheffield United. Picked up some more injuries, and then had a couple of years down at Gillingham. But then I wasn't quite 100%. Went back to Lillishall as it is now. It's now St George's where all the players go and get for rehabilitation and get fit. But it was Lillishall at the time, and I then went. First of all, I spoke to Big Ron at West Brom. Yeah. And just as I was going to go, he went to Spain to manage, and then Brian Talbot, who I was on the same England tour with Brian Robson, he said, he took over, and then I had a few months with West Brom, and then I couldn't quite get fit. Played with Don Goodman actually for the first team in a testimonial game. Yeah. But couldn't quite get up to speed to play first team. And then my old manager, John Barnwell, was managing Walsall at the time with and Paul Taylor, who has had a long association with Walsall, who was the assistant manager at Gillingham, had come. So they got me down to Walsall. And that's when I met a young Chris Marsh, who was 16 at the time. And so he's a few years younger than me, is Marshy. But I then struggled to get fit, played reserve games, but didn't quite do enough. So I had to retire at the end of that season. But it was a great about 3 or 4 months I had with Walsall, and I got a great affection for the club.
And now you're into football management. And an agent rather than management, is it? Football agents.
I'll wear a few hats, Gary. I'm really concentration on the performance side of what I do at the moment, and we look after 1 or 2 young up and coming players. And as I say, I've helped quite a few players over the years come through different clubs. So it's all been an experience. But as I say, I do a lot of the performance work now, which is really what I'm passionate about in helping, and it helps the general public as well. Yeah. So I'm going to be going into that more as well.
And when you say performance work, what sort of stuff?
Yeah, in other words, what I've realised is that there's a lot of things that can help people perform, in the fact that footballers, a lot of them don't move properly, don't move as well as they could do. So some of the ones that get recurring injuries, it's all down to how they move. Yeah. And I work with some of the top movement guys, some of the top sprint coaches in the country, and it really does help. I think that the clubs are getting their act together and they're a lot better now, to be perfectly honest. But that's important. And then the nutrition is obviously important.
Yeah, 'cause I suppose that's from back in the day, when you were playing and when you first started watching, probably, Steve, the nutrition, what the players were eating, like fish and chips before a game and maybe a pint.
That's right. I mean, I remember that the FA Cup game that I mentioned, the Youth Cup game. They took us to a hotel and we had a steak before the game, and it was just a few hours. Now that got no chance of digesting properly, but obviously because we were young enough, you can get over it. But it was totally the wrong thing to have. And it was a treat for us, you know.
And on that note, that's the end of coming up to the end of the first half on Extra Time. So we're off for something to eat. We'll be back in the second half. Welcome back. This is the second half of Extra Time. I'm Gary James with guests Steve Jenkins and Mel Eves. Right then, Steve, thanks for coming on, as I say. And I know you guys have said we've been pals for ages. Born in Walsall.
Indeed.
A big Walsall fan. And I believe, was it your grandfather that took you to the first Walsall game?
Yeah, my grandfather took me when I was 8 years old, which probably seems a bit late nowadays because kids go a lot younger. But, 8 years old was when my grandfather took me down to see the first match. And, I can still remember going down that side of Fellows Park, by the side of the stand.
Fellows Park,
and then seeing that stadium, to me, that was as big as Wembley, about back then as an 8-year-old. And then, of course, my father worked at the Walsall Co-op, so he was manager of the footwear department. So he could never go on a Saturday because obviously the shop was open.
Shop was open, busiest day.
Yeah, so I used to go with my granddad on a Saturday, and then all the Tuesday night games or the bank holiday games, I'd go with my dad.
Yeah, and work-wise, you started out as a DJ and the club that some of you will remember, Barbarella's in Birmingham. You were a DJ there.
Yeah, well, I obviously did a few local gigs around here, and I sort of graduated to Birmingham, and then did Mr. Moon's and the Rum Runner and Barbarella's and the Opposite Lock. All those clubs. All those clubs are,
all gone
that were around. All gone.
Yeah.
But had a fantastic time and made a bit of a name for myself doing the clubs and everything. And I was working 6 nights a week, so I was happy boy.
Yeah. And then moving forward career-wise, you got yourself a gig or a job at one of the record labels, didn't you? Was that right?
All by mistake, really. Yeah. I kind of thought that I would become a broadcaster is what I thought I was going to be. I wasn't paying any tax at the time. Where does this show go? Anyway,
it's okay.
I wasn't paying any tax at the time. So my naive plan, bearing in mind this is way back in the early 70s, was I'd work a couple of days in a record store, pay tax on the money in the record store, keep the money from the evening. Seems logical.
Fair enough.
It's fair enough. So anyway, I went into the record store. Girl who would eventually work for me for 30 years, Sue Buckler, was behind the counter, and I said, "You haven't got any jobs in the record store?" She went, "No." She said, "You know what? You should work for a record company. You know everything about records. We buy records that you pick and do all of that." So she opened Music Week, went, "Look, there's a job, promotion man for a record company right after that." So a couple of days after thinking about it, I wrote after it. 100 people applied, I'll get the gig. I'm in the record business.
Oh.
And so, but, after that, of course, it took me 10 years to learn the business before I had my own company and then became managing director of Jive Records.
Jive Records, of course. And, of course, you work with Stock Aitken and Waterman, as we mentioned earlier with Pete.
Yeah, I work with, I've known Pete since I was 20 years old, actually. I was at Barbarella's and he was DJing at Mr. George's in Coventry. And so, and the way we met was he was going down to London or doing something, and he just went, "Hey kid, come on over, fill in for me at Mr. George's." So I went to Mr. George's and played his gig one night, and we became pals. And as we were both hustling in London to get a job or work for record labels and everything, we used to go up and down on the train together.
All right.
So that partnership is now 40 years old.
Wow. And during the time, you've come up with some great acts, haven't you? You had Tom Jones. You've worked with.
Well, with everyone really. I mean, in the Impulse days when I had that company, it was Elton John, David Bowie, pretty much everyone that was current at the time. And then the Stock Aitken and Waterman period, which was obviously highlighted by Kylie and Jason, but Bananarama, Rick Astley, all of that. And then fortunately with Jive Records, I hit the gong on a worldwide basis, which was Britney Spears, Justin Timberlake, Backstreet Boys.
There's a picture here we're showing you of with Britney.
Yes.
When was that taken? Do you remember that? Or was it?
Yeah, actually, we were doing. You know, when you've got a new album coming out, and we were distributed by RCA Records at the time, and so they have a big conference, and so you go to the conference and perform a couple of tracks exclusively for all the members of staff on a worldwide basis. So me and Britney were in New York at that time, and she was doing a couple of tracks from the new album, and that shot was taken at the sort of after show drinks party.
And what's she like to work with? Is she a nice girl?
I love Britney.
Yeah.
I mean, you know, I first met Britney when she was 14 years old, and I worked with her until she was 22. And obviously it was the heyday where she was the pop princess, you know, so Britney really lost a lot of her youth because she was working 7 days a week, but always fantastic, always up for doing stuff, you know, and I love her, regular girl.
And the other thing viewers might not know about you is you worked with Esther Ranson and set up Childline.
Well, Esther set up Childline, but she came to me because obviously I was having a few hit records at the time, and she explained to me that Childline was a very small operation at that time, and she explained to me and took me down to the offices and everything, and said, "Would you make some records and you know, make some income for us to pay for the phone calls?" So I made 2 or 3 records for them. Fortunately, they were hits. Fortunately, we made some money, and Childline became an institution.
And on for that, coming up to the present day, you've just released this album, Silver Linings. Tell us about that, Steve.
Well, Silver Linings is out this week, and it's a 40-track compilation. And basically, Silverline is a helpline for older people, and it works at its best, I think, when you know you've lost your long-time partner, right? And so people become lonely and can go days without talking to anyone. So Esther set up the helpline. People can phone the Silverline helpline, and you can talk to someone there for 2 minutes or for half an hour, depending on what you want to do. And so Esther came to me again and said, "Oh, I've done Silverline, and you know, you wouldn't put an album together and see if you can raise some money for us again and do all of that." So I've been working on that for the last few months, and it's come out, and it's been received very well and seems to be selling well.
Okay, and time's going to beat us if we're not careful. We need to talk about Walsall. You've got a couple of books out as well that people can, if they Google Steve Jenkins, they're on your website. The Steve Jenkins, your autobiography there, which is The Future is in the History, great title, and then this one, Walking Down the Wensbury Road. Fantastic.
Yeah, and that's 50 years of supporting Walsall Football Club, and of course knowing all the players, you know, who I've been friendly with through all those years. You know. So Walsall at Wembley, brilliant, first time in 127 years. As a fan, how does that make you feel? It's the ultimate, really. You know, we've been close on 2 or 3 occasions, but to be going to Wembley now and selling that vast amount of tickets for a small club like
27,000 or up to something like that, is it? Something like that.
Yeah. I mean, you know, for me, the moment is when they walk out of that tunnel onto that pitch, and that 30, 60, 90 seconds for me, after 54 years of supporting that team, watching that 90 seconds is going to be the moment, that's for sure.
And so you're going with Pete's going as well, isn't he?
Yeah, you know, my sister's going, my niece, my wife, Pete. It's all a bit of a family
Everybody's
affair.
going. Yeah. And you're sorting your ticket out, aren't you?
Absolutely, and I'll be there. Yeah. And no, it's a fantastic achievement. I mean, Dean Smith and Richard O'Kelly, I must pay tribute to them. I mean, I've known them for years before they've done so well in the last few years with Walsall. But the way that they've set about things and the way that they've developed the culture, and especially the football culture, but the overall ethos of the club has been absolutely spot on. And I think for any club of Walsall size, they're going to be probably headhunted by bigger clubs, but for any clubs of you know, a Walsall size, with the bigger clubs round them, such as West Brom, Villa, Wolves, it's they're doing a brilliant job, and they just show everybody the way to manage a football club of Walsall size, and the way that they've developed the team, the way that they've got a really good way of playing as well. They stick to their principles, and then they bring in players at the right time, and they also believe very much in the youth policy as well, and they develop their own players. They've done really well.
Brilliant.
It is fantastic. I know, and I had Dean Smith, the manager, say, I think it was yesterday, that at the moment he'd rather have the silverware than the playoff position, and I really hope that they can bring it off. They go as underdogs, which isn't a bad thing.
No, well, I think that's been our position for 127 years. I don't think we should change it.
No, and I think, and we were saying, Walsall is like everybody's favourite aunt. It's the team you go and visit when the family are away, and we're really looking forward to it. Guys, thank you very much.
It's been a
that's
pleasure.
it. The final whistle is about to blow. So thanks very much to Steve Jenkins. Steve,
Cheers,
thanks
Gary.
for making
Thank
the
you very
trouble.
much.
And
It's
to
been
Mel,
an absolute
Mel Eves.
pleasure, Gary.
Hopefully we can get you guys back on again at some
Sure,
point.
love to.
When you can come back up, and we'll talk more.
Look forward to it.
But that's it. That's it for now. The final whistle's about to blow. If you've got any suggestions of guests you'd like to see on the show, or if we're not talking about your sport, please let us know. The email is extratime@bigcentre.tv.